Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon. Good evening for some. Don't worry, I won't say good night yet. And I'm putting some emphasis on the word yet, and you will understand why later on. So my name is Sylvain Landry. I'm a logistics and operations management professor at HEC Montreal Business School, where I'm also director of continuous improvement, consulting and support. I'm a friend of Kata School Cascadia and co-founder of Kata School Francophonie. Alors, plusieurs d'entre vous parlez français, alors je vous invite donc à ce rendez-vous hebdomadaire où on parle de Kata en français. And as Tracy mentioned, I'm also an author of this new book, if you can see it. So very proud of it, very proud of the support I got from the Kata community. So this is a primer on Toyota Kata. So I will be facilitating this first Kata School Cascadia virtual Kata Geek Meetup. A first of many, I'm sure. We have a great lineup, 6 speakers, 6 lightning short presentations in less than 60 minutes. So this is an ambitious experiment. To support this experiment, we will be using a mural board. So basically, this will help support the conversation, reflections, questions, answers you have. So after each presentations, we will invite you to either raise your hand or add some comment to the board. Each presentation will end with an open question. So again, we hope to continue the conversation afterwards. So without further ado, here's Sam Morgan.
Well, thanks everybody for allowing me the opportunity to chat with you today. I'm super excited to be here and with all my friends here. It's an honor. Confident Learning for All. On the most recent episode of Mark Graban's Lean Blog podcast, a shameless plug here, when asked about how I would sum up continuous improvement, I said those 4 words, confident learning for all. And I have to say that I didn't just have that quality in me inherently. Being a confident learner has come through the learning and coaching I've done in the Toyota Kata. And as a coach now, it's something I hope that when I work with someone, that is who they become. But as I said, that's not how I started. When I was first learning about the Toyota Kata, I started searching out video. And I remember a couple of years ago, as I was learning about the Toyota Kata and searching for those videos, I found a video from a guy named Thilo Schwartz. Some of you may know him. And in it, he was talking about the 4 steps of the improvement kata as used in an organization. He described the 4 steps as many of us know: understanding the direction or challenge, grasping the current condition, establishing your next target condition, and experimenting towards that target condition. He also went on to describe an often not talked about part of the improvement kata, the long-term vision of the organization. And I'll never forget this because he described it in the term of a picture, like that of a magnet, that the long-term vision was causing the movement of the improvement efforts to be pulled forward. That as the company had a long-term vision, a clear long-term vision, then it helped with setting clear challenges and achieving those challenges. The clear challenges help with setting clear target conditions and achieving them. But it all started with having that vision for the business, having that true north. But what if you're working with an individual to help them achieve a personal challenge? What do you do in this case to help them get a long-term vision? And that's where purpose comes in. And I think that's why the picture that Thilo presented was so compelling to me around purpose, because as I was watching his video, I had been working out in my own life and in conversation, this idea of purpose and doing some deep exploration work on that. And I could see how having found a clear purpose for myself in my life, it made it much easier to make decisions and move forward in life. It was like having purpose was pulling me forward, similar to having that long-term vision and having that magnetic pull. And so as I'm starting my own kata practice and a coaching practice with individuals, I'm experimenting with a practice, a process, where before I dive into understanding the direction or challenge with the individual, I'm working with the individual over the first week in daily coaching cycles to help them get clear on a picture of their purpose by asking questions, drawing, reflecting, writing, and then more reflecting. My hypothesis is that if people prioritize purpose, I would expect as they then choose their challenge, they'll make sure that it aligns with that purpose and that will accelerate their movement towards achieving their challenge, and most importantly, accelerate their learning. So I'd love to hear from you. What value do you see in incorporating purpose in your Toyota Kata coaching practice and your practice as a learner? And then what is one small way that you could infuse purpose into your practice?
So thank you, Sam. Great. So purpose to foster or ensure alignment. So if some of you have questions or comments, you can either raise your hand, as I said earlier, or use the mural board.
This is really an experiment for me. Like, I'm doing it as a part of my process and just adding it in. So I'd love to hear anybody else's thoughts on if they've tried it or what they think based on my hypothesis, or any questions they have.
Sam, I've got a question to start it off. I reflect on a book called Drive, where the author talks about the importance of purpose, autonomy, and mastery. How do you see autonomy and mastery within the model that you're working through?
Autonomy and mastery. Yeah, so I think, like, for me, the platform of the improvement code, one of the things that my coaches, Julie Simmons, always used to say is that it helps build skills and capabilities. But for me, it's helped really with self-efficacy, right? Like building that confidence as you learn, like you practice the Toyota Kata, that you're building that muscle in yourself that says, I can do this. I don't have to be afraid of the obstacle. So you start building that autonomy just by practicing it as a learner, and then as a coach too, you're learning that as well. Does that answer your question?
It does, yes.
Thank you. That was a good one.
Okay, so we'll move to the next presentation to Gemma. So Gemma, your turn.
Wonderful. So thank you very much. I'm really excited to be part of this event. And today I'm going to talk to you about this concept of emotions as data. So to put this into context, where this came from, over the past year, I've been adding in an extra question to the coaching kata. So after I've asked my learner what actually happened, I will then ask them, how did that make you feel? And I started doing this because I had a sense that the answer to the previous question was not necessarily telling me everything. So from their body language and their facial expressions, I often felt like there was more information to find. And having experimented with that extra question, I now think it's really valuable and insightful, and it's really helped me understand my learners' thinking much more deeply. Plus, I believe it's also really important to normalize talking about our feelings. And this is a whole other talk, but very briefly, I believe the more we can encourage people to talk about their feelings in a very safe, supportive scenario, like a coaching cycle, the more likely they will be to be comfortable to share their feelings at other times. And this could be incredibly important if they're one of the 1 in 5 people who suffer from a mental health issue. Now, through my time experimenting with this, as I learned more about the importance of tracking and understanding emotions, I started to encourage learners to include a feeling as one of their outcome metrics, a positive feeling which linked to their challenge. So here's some examples of feelings which learners have tracked as data in their outcome metrics. So I've had learners track their confidence levels, track their happiness, track their exhilaration, track their satisfaction. And by connecting with and analysing these feelings, I saw learners have huge insight into their obstacles and into their challenges. And by tracking their data on a run chart, it enabled them to objectively see patterns and trends. Now, this year, I've taken a qualification in counselling because I wanted to work and understand more about this work that I was doing. And I passed last week, which is cool. And in that qualification, I learned about something called cognitive behavioural therapy. And one of the key principles of this type of therapy is that our thoughts, emotions, and behaviours are all linked. So what we think affects how we feel and how we act. And what we do affects how we think and how we feel. And what we feel affects how we think and what we do. So all of these things are interrelated. Now, as Kata coaches, we are teaching learners how to think and act in a scientific way. We are helping them to observe, understand, and improve their thoughts and their behaviors. And it seems to me that we're missing a trick if we do not also encourage them to pay attention to the way that they feel. So here's a really quick example of a way a learner can do this. You can have them create an emoji scale, which describes the range of emotions they're particularly interested in, which relates to their target condition and to their challenge. This one is from a learner who was tracking their confidence. And I really love the very confident emoji up at the top there with sunglasses on. Once you have a scale, it's really easy to create a really simple run chart, day by day, showing their feelings against that scale. They can then see how their feelings are changing. They can see patterns and trends. They can see the impact of their experiments, and they can find clues for obstacles. Another quick example, I had another learner who created a really simple Google survey, which appeared on an alert on their phone each day as they left the office, which made it really easy for them to record their daily metrics of exhilaration at the same time of day, every day, which then fed into their run chart. So my question for you is, what emotion could you track that might help you understand your progress towards a challenge? I'd recommend trying it for 2 weeks. Make yourself a run chart and see what micro learnings you might find. Thank you
so much, Gemma. So if I understand correctly, Alexa or Siri can probably read the 5 questions, but they can't coach yet.
No, absolutely. Yeah, this is not something you could, it's not an app. You can't do it by an app.
Great. So questions or comments, perhaps, Gemma, you can take a peek at the mural board. And
okay, so questions. So some people are saying, so the emotion I would track is peacefulness. Nice. So not feeling stressed or doubting. Lovely. Important to connect. And I should say the emotions should be positive. So we wouldn't want to track stress, for example, but tracking peacefulness would be a nice thing. Cool. Joy, safety, confidence. Tilo has his hand up. Hey, Tilo.
Go ahead and unmute.
Hey, Gemma. I love your question. It's very cool. Could you just show your first slide again? Is that possible? With the question card, that would be super. Because I think there's another thing we can learn from your presentation and what you're pointing out, that the questions on the card are really like a guide rail for us as coaches. And basically what you did, you used the question on the card, what did you learn? And jumped off from there into a deepening question, investigation question, the feeling part. Yeah. And I think that's so cool. So the questions are the guide rail, and then we can use them as a platform to jump off. Like you could ask about, what did you learn about the process? What did you learn about working with your peers? And how did that make you feel? So it's like this question, what do you learn, is much deeper. It's just the jump off point. I think that's really cool. And I wasn't quick enough with you, Sam. I just had to look it up. There was a podcast just the other week from Adam Grant with Mark Cuban, so the owner of the Dallas Mavericks, I guess it is. And Mark Cuban said, I don't believe in passion. He said, go for the effort. But I think you put it nicely. It's passion plus TK puts passion plus effort together. When I listened to the podcast, I said, I don't agree. But now you kind of gave me an answer. You combine it, right? TK puts the effort part in there.
Cool. Thank you, Tilo. Thank you, Gemma. Let's move on to the next presentation. Welcome to Mary.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. I'm Mary Jones. I'm a project manager for a biotech firm. So have a lean background, but I've been curious about continuous improvement in lean. And so I've been on a journey. And about a year ago, I discovered Kata and the Kata Girl Geeks. And so for those women on the call, I strongly encourage you to join us in Kata Girl Geeks. There's a link on the Mural Board to hear about it. When I joined Kata Girl Geeks, I got into a learning group and was able to practice Kata with my coach, Andrea Lee. And I'm going to share today a key moment that made a light bulb moment for me when we talked about reading the target condition as a hypothesis. I had created my current condition and was looking at how I ran my project and had many metrics that I was measuring and captured those data, including one. My outcome metric is based on my feelings. How did I feel about my day? But my next step, Andrea asked me to create the target condition. And this was really hard for me. I struggled because how do I know what the future is going to look like? How do I know which of these metrics I'm currently looking at are relevant? How do I know which ones are going to impact the target condition? It made no sense to me. I really was just lost. But she suggested put one together. So I proposed a target condition and brought it to her and said, I did it, but how do I know it's right? So she said, you don't. It's a hypothesis, not a must do. And that was an aha moment for me. So then she said the next key step was, now let's read it through as a hypothesis. And I literally spoke out loud and walked through and said, if I follow this operating pattern and do step 1, 2, 3, 4 on my meetings, I propose that I will see these process metrics of 8 out of 10 meetings have this feeling or this reaction. And if those work, then my outcome metric I propose will be, I will get this rating for 2 days in a row. And again, as I read it out loud, the links just clicked into place for me. And I thought, aha, this is what I'm proposing. How do they connect? That was the key thing. Like, if this, then that. The other thing about the word hypothesis for me was, okay, it freed me up. This is a guess, a hypothesis. We're going to see what happens as we get to this target condition. It gave me freedom to experiment and to try and to learn. And so when I got there, it was not, I have to meet this target. It was, let's see what happens. Was it right? Was it wrong? What did we learn? Where are we going to go next? So as a learner and as a new person in Kata, this was a critical moment to think, how do we think through the target condition? And it's a hypothesis. And reading it out loud is a really critical step. And I still do it every time I'm doing a new target condition. I do it for myself, and I'm just starting to be a coach, and I'm going to encourage that as well. So I leave you with this other question. Besides the target condition, what other parts of the storyboard can be read as a hypothesis?
Thank you very much, Mary. Love it. If I follow this, I propose that, and so on. So if this, then that. Love it. Love the idea of reading the target condition as an hypothesis. So questions, or perhaps you can peek at Mural Board as well. We have Laurel.
I'm wondering, so if it's a hypothesis, which I love that framing, what do you do when you're wrong? You get to the end of the achieved by date, and you're like, I got it wrong.
Right. But it's a scientific experiment. You've learned, you're thinking, right? It's great. I loved it. Actually, there was a time I was wrong. It's like, okay, that didn't work. And it was so freeing to say, I don't have to do that again. Right now,
you set a new target condition.
A new target condition.
Thank you. That is free.
More question I love around this topic. I love this quote, or I never lose. Either I win or I learn. So something to think about. More questions, or Mary, if you peek at the Mural Board, would you like to comment on some of the post-its?
Right. I thought someone wrote talking out loud gives clarity so often. And I found that as well. There was a huge difference between looking at the target condition myself on a piece of paper and in my head, and standing there and talking to my coach and saying the words out loud. It made a huge difference. I don't know about the psychology or the physiology of the brain, but it really did. And it clicked just hearing myself say it. So I would strongly recommend that part as well. It also checks assumptions that I'm making. Someone else commented on that. They couldn't articulate their assumptions, but by saying it out loud, you hear it differently too. And you go, oh, wait a minute. And maybe you do tweak your target condition at that point. As you read it out loud, something is not quite right, or there isn't a logical link. This doesn't lead to that. and it helps you stop and reflect and say, maybe I need to tweak that. Somebody says all parts of the storyboard are a hypothesis, even the challenge. I would agree. I read the challenge out loud every time, and I think of it as a hypothesis as well. So the experimenting record, as you read backwards, can be considered a hypothesis as well.
Cool. Thank you so much, Mary. We will move on to our next speaker, Julie. C'est à ton tour.
Merci, Sylvain. So my name is Julie Savage-Fournier. I'm the CEO of Kaizen Radical because I filled a form to create a company. And I'm a co-founder of Kata School Francophonie as well. And I've sent you the link in the chat if you ever want to join and hear about Kata in French. I will tell you today about how I've been measuring my coaching because I'm a huge geek about measurements. I truly believe that everything that exists can actually be measured. And this is pretty much my way of learning about life. At the last CataCon, I talked about the way that I'm tracking my coaching cycles with a challenge for my learner and a few questions that I answer to set an intention before each cycle. And I evolved that a bit because I could explore with the transcript function in Zoom. So I had access to a lot of data that I could explore. And my first iteration of that was to start the transcript, perform the coaching cycle, and then I would save the transcript at the end. I would do a word search for each of the 5 questions of the coaching cycle to time my coaching cycle. I would chart the time, reflect on the cycle, and set my next intention. So what I found out by doing that is that, well, the cycles tend to reduce in duration as we move along and as the learner gain proficiency. That the transition cycles take more time, but like way more time. They can take double the time as usual cycles. And the transition cycles for me are the cycle between the planning phase and the experimenting phase, or the cycle where we end the experimenting phase, either because we've reached the target condition or we've reached the date. The planning phase cycle in general takes about a third longer than the executing cycle. And I also got aware of where we were spending time. So talking about the next steps during the planning cycle, talking about the target condition and the obstacles in the first cycle of the experimenting phase were the outliers, the places where I was spending more time. And all these findings were totally unsurprising. So I decided to dig deeper and look at what was happening between the questions in the cycles. So I went back into the transcript and I identified the key moments of each cycle and sort them between questions, teaching, and reinforcement. Because the people that know my coaching style know that I make a big point of celebrating accomplishments, of reinforcing everything that's good. And it's a great way to associate a coaching cycle with positive emotion. Then I would reflect on the cycle. I would record my micro learnings and set an intention for the next coaching cycle. And what I did was do a big mind map with the samples I got from the transcript and the categories. So if you look at it, what's in blue are the questions, what's in red are the teaching moments, and what's in yellow are the celebrations. So by reviewing my previous cycles, I found more learnings. I identified a pattern that I had more teaching and reinforcement in the planning phase and more questions in the experimenting phase. I introduced new intentional patterns that were really the best gold nugget in those findings. So I started doing more reinforcement and questions during the coaching cycle. And I tried to move all the teaching moments for after the cycles, unless a direct questions was asked. The purpose of that is that I wanted the learner to be able to self-identify where they needed help and directly ask for it to foster autonomy. And I also started using questions to teach self-appreciation. So instead of directly giving reinforcement, I started to question the person so they can identify their good calls. And I discovered new categories of interaction so that I love the teaching questions, the reinforcement questions, and using reinforcement as teaching. And I'm just so happy with that. And I hope you can start doing that as well. So now I have 2 questions. For coaches, how do you assess the quality of your coaching? And for learners, what are your expectations for your coach? And it's totally linked to my exploration of like, what's the voice of the customers and what's the voice of the people performing the coaching. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Julie. This is quite amazing. So thank you so much. So any questions? You can also, as always, speak at the mural board and react to some of the comments or post-its.
I see one that says, I love letting the learner identify their success. And I think that being able to self-assess is such a key element to developing autonomy. And when I see a new learner, I see the second coach they could be one day. So I'm trying to very purposefully give them some building blocks to build their own autonomy and to build their own confidence in their coaching. And recognizing what we do good is something that we should all learn, because that's not how we're taught to think. We usually are taught to criticize ourselves. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Julie. And now to William, and thank you so much to all speakers. We're on time.
Greetings, everyone. My name is William Harvey. I have the pleasant experience of knowing many people on the call and lots of new faces, so hope to connect in due time. I've had a career in manufacturing primarily, and I moonlight as a University of Cincinnati professor, teach marketing, management, and finance. And I was so fascinated by Mike Rother's book and some stuff that I learned, I wanted to go test it. So I wrote a dissertation on Kata, and after about 3 years, you think you can't learn any more, only to find events like today, which indicates there's so much more for us to gain. And really what I want to talk about today is second coaching. And really the 3 things that I think are helpful in identifying or using some of the same patterns we use in coaching itself as the improvement kata on ourselves as second coaches and those first coaches. First comment I want to talk about is aligning on one opportunity and the reason why. For me, I found whenever somebody was coaching me and I didn't agree with what I was being told I needed to work on, I wouldn't work on it. And in fact, I'd put my hands up and really just kind of reject the lessons being taught, even if they were true. And then I have a dear friend who has since passed. His name is Samuel Soleil, and he had connected me with something called motivational interviewing. And I had to read through a lot of crazy stuff to figure out its essence. But essentially, if I don't align with where I want the person to go, whether I'm the first coach or the second coach, I'm going to have a lot of trouble. So what I would encourage is to really understand, what does that first coach need? And as the second coach, help them remove that barrier. And as using the improvement kata in that, it's very simple for me to really say, let's set a target condition for what does success look like in their eyes. And by that, if we achieve that, whatever the date is, we can move on to the second or third thing that they may be interested in learning. But what I've also found equally important is the value of focus. So what I find often is after a session, I would want to go into the 55 things somebody could do better in their next session. And what I found myself doing was overwhelming people. And I received some really good feedback that, William, it's just too much. It's too academic. Let's not talk about that. Let's get very specific. So if I combine the alignment to the focus, I can be in a much better position. And part of it, I think the value in this is that feedback is something I can experiment with next time, particularly from that first coach. As a second coach, it's also easy for me to reflect with my own note taking. So afterwards, what do we agree to and what am I observing for the next time? Unless there's something blatantly obvious, I wouldn't mention it because it's just too much information, particularly for me when I'm the first coach in the moment, trying to get through all the questions that have been referenced today. And perhaps most importantly, we talk a lot about reflection. And I want to talk about this concept of how we learn. There's a wonderful researcher from the 70s that posted this around single loop, double loop, and triple loop learning. His name is Chris Agiris. And what he found was in the single loop and double loop learning, you're asking different questions. And those first two questions, am I doing things right? And am I doing the right thing? Are where we spend most of our time. I'm going to encourage people to go to that third or the triple loop. And the third question, what is right? So often in my discussions with a coach, I'll say if they're not doing it the way I want them to, they're not doing it right. And then I question that, why is that right? And the beauty, and I imagine Mike knows this a little bit about his work, but I think the beauty is that we're tapping into the creativity of the person. And the thing that I had to really reflect on was that maybe the answer that the learner comes up with, or the coach guiding the learner, is better than the answer that I would have originally came to. And I encourage everyone really to think about what is right. And I'll share in a moment of humility that I had a leadership gap that was crushing me. I used to say failure was not an option. And I had a wonderful coach who asked me the question. She said, well, who said that? And I realized at that very moment, my leadership and my coaching were impacted because I had this view that failure was not an option. So in my mind, I constructed this whole reality around me that that was the right thing to do, only to find out later that it was very limiting. So I end with this question. What has been the most transformational coaching input you've received?
Thank you very much, William. Thank you for revisiting Chris Agiris' famous model. And as mentioned, William wrote one of the very few doctoral dissertation on Kata. So this is amazing in itself. So thank you for your contribution to the field. So questions to William?
What I hear or what I see, let me see, what is right equals creativity, fantastic insight. And perhaps I'm just a geek on the epistemological side, but if I can continue to go deeper and deeper into knowledge, understanding, it really helps me deconstruct it. And at least in manufacturing, I find it works not only in the coaching conversations, but also in troubleshooting when I'm helping an operator solve a problem. How do you think it works? And then I find out they don't understand some physical or electrical or mechanical engineering based principle that causes them to take the wrong action. So rather than judge the bad action or the incorrect action, it's like, well, don't judge it as bad. Let's get the right knowledge so they can make the better decision the next time. Thank you, everyone. We'll keep us on time.
Thanks. Thank you, William. And now let's turn to Tracy.
Okay, so my name is Tracy Defoe. I am one of the founders of Kata School Cascadia and Kata Girl Geeks. I am a learner, a coach, and a second coach all the time. And it's my pleasure today to introduce you to something we've been playing with at Kata School Cascadia, the power of the word yet, and the origin story of our mascot. So we're landing on a little bit of a lighter note. So we're all familiar, I think, with this situation of a coach and a learner at the storyboard, and the situation perhaps when a learner says, I don't know. And we were talking about that one day, and one of the people on the call said that in her child's school, they were teaching them, if they said, I don't know, to always add the word yet. I don't know yet. And we were, of course, excited about that idea. And some of us started to try to, as coaches, particularly pay attention and think, okay, I got an I don't know yet. This is a great opportunity to develop that growth mindset and to reinforce the idea that we will learn, that learning it is possible. And in fact, that threshold of knowledge, I don't know yet, is exactly what the coach should be really excited about. And if those of you who don't know, I found out the Yeti, the idea of yet and Yeti isn't such a pun when you translate it. So if you're unfamiliar with the somewhat mythological animal, the Yeti, here's a picture of him from Wikipedia, or them. It's a legendary, perhaps, or real, depending on your thoughts on that matter, animal or part man, part human, also called the abominable snowman in some legends. And it resembles somebody we have here in Cascadia that we call Bigfoot, also known as a Sasquatch. So we thought, okay, Catskill Cascadia, we could maybe make some use of the word Yeti. And Mark Rosenthal, of course, is one of our stalwarts and founders, and he was on the call, and he said, hey, we should have a Yeti as a mascot, and we can call them I Don't Know Yeti. And so it is my pleasure to introduce you to the mascot of Catskill Cascadia, who is called the I Don't Know Yeti. And we love the Yeti so much. We put them on buttons, we put them on mugs, and a t-shirt. And I see Sylvain has changed to be wearing his I Don't Know Yeti t-shirt. I am also wearing an I Don't Know Yeti t-shirt because we think the reminder of adding that yet to I Don't Know is really fun. Oh, here's Tucker Cass in his I Don't Know Yeti t-shirt. And we liked it so much that we physically made two so far, Yetis as I Don't Know Yetis. And here's a picture of Gemma with the baby Yeti that we call the baby I Don't Know Yeti, who actually lives with Mark Rosenthal now, and then the big Yeti who lives with Gemma. So there's the two at our summer event last July. And we had so much fun with I Don't Know Yeti that he travels sort of like Flat Stanley. If you know who Flat Stanley is, a children's book where people take pictures of a little drawing all over the world and say that Flat Stanley has, gone to Disneyland and he's gone to the London Bridge. Here you can see just different people, different ones of our Kata friends with I Don't Know Yeti. There's Savannah, his wife, of course, Gemma and Mark, Julie Simmons, one of our founders who just about retired on that day. There's Betty and Laurel and Arlie and me there with I Don't Know Yeti at the end. So I have a few questions for you. Where or when could the I Don't Know Yeti attitude or even the actual Yeti help you out as a coach or a learner? And what words do you think open us up to that growth mindset? Because we have found the power of the word yet to keep people in the growth mindset to be really amazing. So that is my presentation. And open it up to reactions. Yes, there's Yeti. Hey, Yeti. Thank you. Thank you, Gemma. The I Don't Know Yeti is part of our approach to making learning and community fun. So besides where can I get one, I don't know if anybody has a question about growth mindset, but I suggest you write yourself a sticky note that says yet and try to put it into your practice when you hit thresholds of knowledge or when somebody says, I'm not sure, I don't know yet.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much, Tracy. So it's okay not to know, which is so liberating. So questions to the group, to the speakers. Okay, we have Sam.
I'll just say one of my favorite quotes from Tony Horton. He's the guy that did the P90X and does all the exercise videos. When he's dealing with somebody who's really having a challenge moving forward, like doing an exercise, he says, it's not, I can't do it, I presently struggle with. So I think that sums up kind of the similar mindset or framework.
Thank you.
So Catskill Cascadia, we have a website at catskill-cascadia.org, and right at the top, you will find links to all kinds of things, including our store.
So thank you, Gemma. Thank you, Tracy. Thank you to Jennifer also, who worked behind the scene.
Thank you to you, Sylvain, for taking on organizing this and also hosting. So let's give everybody a round of applause. Yay! And thank you again. And thank you to our speakers and to our host and to everybody who helped out. And thank you for sharing this hour with us. We've never done one of these before in this way. So having 50 people at one point is amazing. Awesome. Thanks a lot, everybody.
People using Toyota Kata may experience unexpected team empowerment, heart palpitations, and shortness of breath from excitement of solving long-standing problems. Long-term effects can include building a culture of scientific thinking, more robust processes, and an ability to respond quickly to change. Work teams may also begin to improve processes on their own without prompting for management. Ask your coach if Kata is right for you.